Welcome to Hurry Up Pinball, the show where I teach you how to work on your pinball machine. Today I will show you how to adjust the left orbit ball guide on Stranger Things. So grab your tools and let's get going. During one of my Stranger Things streaming sessions, I was having a lot of issues with the left orbit ball guide feeding the ball into the sling post and slings. The behavior was erratic and definitely affected gameplay. I briefly touched on this issue during my How to Install the UV Light Kit tutorial, but I found the ball guide would consistently return to its normal position over time. This tutorial will show you how to bend the ball guide so that it stays in the desired position. After completing this fix, ball kickouts are consistently feeding to the left flipper along with the burn it back loops. To begin, open the coin door, remove the lockdown bar, close the coin door, and remove the Playfield glass. If you have cabinet protectors, now is the time to use them. Now partially raise the Playfield and rest it on the support brackets. Go ahead and remove the pinballs at this time. Since we will be fully raising the Playfield, I recommend placing a small towel or blanket on the back box to avoid scratching it. Now fully raise the Playfield. We will need to disconnect 2 ramp wires before removing the ramp. If you have the UV light kit installed, you'll need to disconnect 3 wires. Now disconnect the orange and red Molex connectors seen here. If you have a UV light kit installed, you'll also need to disconnect the brown and yellow Molex connector. Now move down the Playfield a little and you will see a 2-wire Molex connector coming out of the hole in the Playfield as seen here. Disconnect it at this time. If you do not have a UV light kit installed, just remember you will only need to disconnect 2 Molex connectors total. Now lower the Playfield and rest it on the support brackets. Go ahead and remove the through Playfield wires from the Molex connectors you just disconnected on the bottom of the Playfield. If they get hung up while removing them, do not yank on them. Partially raise the Playfield and free them up. The left ramp is held on by 4 screws. Start by removing the 2 screws and washers on the lower end of the ramp and place them in a magnetic nut bowl for safekeeping. I placed a small clean towel on the Playfield followed by a magnetic nut bowl. This makes removing hardware and keeping track of it much easier. Now move up the ramp and remove the screw directly in front of the red flasher housing. The last screw you need to remove to free the ramp is located just to the left of the Demigorgon. Note how the small plastic tab in the lower ramp section is situated below the end of the upper ramp section. This is important when reinstalling the ramp. Go ahead and remove the ramp at this time. The wires for the upper flasher are tucked under the left ramp, so be careful when removing it. If it gets hung up, be gentle when freeing the connector under the ramp, and do not yank on it. With the ramp out of the way, we can easily get to the 2 plastics that need to be removed to adjust the ball guide. Remove the 2 screws and washers holding on the elevated clear plastic, then remove the plastic and the 2 post extensions and washers below it. Now remove the Playfield plastic to get access to the screws holding on the ball guide. Here are the 2 screws that hold on this section of the ball guide. I also noticed a large extension post that was starting to sink into the Playfield. I removed this tall post and found a small washer to place under it as seen here. This is not part of adjusting the ball guide, but I wanted to mention it in case your post was digging into the Playfield. Now loosen the upper and lower ball guide screws. Next, completely remove the lower ball guide screw. This will allow you to properly bend the ball guide so it does not go back into its normal position. With the lower screw removed and the upper screw a few turns loose, gently bend the ball guide out several times. Don't go too far, just enough to put a slight bend in the guide. This will keep the guide from settling back into its factory position. The lower ball guide screw hole in the Playfield should line up with the back of the hole in the mounting tab, and it should rest naturally in this position. I also decided to place an old Bally Williams rubber post sleeve in the small gap between the Playfield rail and the ball guide. This will add a little pressure on the ball guide further up in the orbit and possibly help deaden the ball when ejected from the orbit ball lock. This is not required to fix the ball guide, but I suspect it may help. Here is a look at the area where I inserted the post sleeve. Here is what it should look like once the post sleeve is inserted and putting pressure on the ball guide. Now reinstall the lower ball guide screw, but don't tighten it up yet. Install the upper ball guide screw and do not tighten it down yet either. I'd recommend holding the ball guide in position and then tightening down the screws. I held the ball guide out as far as it would go with the lower screw in place. With the ball guide in its new position, go back and tighten up any loose screws at this time. Now it's time to test the ball guide, so remove the towel and any items on it from the playfield and fully lower the playfield into position. Turn on the pinball machine at this time. As long as you don't press the start button, the game will not register that the pinballs are missing. Now grab one pinball and manually feed the ball into the mystery lock. Be sure to catch the ball when it ejects so it does not go into the drain. Test the ball lock and kick out multiple times. If the ball is not feeding properly to the flipper, loosen the lower screw and move the guide in or out as needed. My ball guide was as far out as it would go with the lower screw in position. I would like to mention that you want your pin to be level side to side or with a very slight lean to the left. My pin is at 6.7 degrees and low 0.1 degree on the left side. If the pin is high on the left side, the ball will not roll out of the lockup before the post comes back up. You also want to make sure the spinner does not come in contact with the ball guide since it is in a new position. If it does, you can loosen the two screws holding on the spinner and slightly change the angle. Now reinstall the tall extension post, install the playfield plastic, followed by the two washers and two extension posts. Now grab the ramp and feed the ramp wires into the proper holes in the playfield. The upper flasher can be a bit tricky, so take your time. The hole for the upper flasher is accessible with the ramp in place. With the wires fed through the playfield, reinstall the clear upper plastic using two washers and two screws. Make sure to route the flasher and UV kit wire in the channel on the clear plastic. When installing the ramp, remember that the tab on the lower ramp section sits under the upper ramp section. After placing the tab in the proper position, reinstall the four washers and screws that hold on the left ramp. With the ramp reattached, fully raise the playfield so you can reconnect the Molex connectors for the ramp flashers and UV kit. Near the UV power board, reconnect the orange and red connector for the ramp flasher and the yellow and brown connector if you have the UV light kit installed. Double check the wires on the top of the playfield and remove any slack from the top of the playfield. Now move down the playfield and reconnect the other ramp flasher as seen here. With the flashers and UV kit reconnected, completely lower the playfield. It's not a bad idea to give it another test before closing everything back up. If everything looks good, remove the cabinet protectors, reinstall the pinballs, reinstall the playfield glass and lockdown bar, and close the coin door. Be sure to play a few test games to double check your work. This is Craig with Hurry Up Pinball, and I wanted to say thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, show your support for Hurry Up Pinball and click the subscribe button. We can also be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under Hurry Up Pinball.